Once upon a time. It was a beautiful day at the fair. The lutes were innumerable, and the drinks were flowing steadily throughout the town. Not much was going on except the fair today. Even the mayor was out in the sunshine, making the rounds, shaking hands and forgetting acquaintances. The baker was busy at work beside the butcher, the bartenders, and the produce sellers. Everyone had an evil counterpart selling equally quality goods, so each man fought by means of advertising and promoting their goods the loudest way they could. The music from the bands, the yelling from the booth keepers, and the constant laughter rang together as if it was orchestrated. Everyone was having a ball even before the real festivities began. It was almost noon when the call rang out. A scrawny little man with festive yellow and purple stripes down his sleeves and stockings stood on a wooden ale crate and shouted, "Hear ye, hear ye! The main events are about to begin at the town center. Make your way, and don't forget to bring your tickets." The crowd all turned their heads like deer frightened by a noise, and then quickly dropped what they were doing to run towards the center of the town. Even the mayor shoved a little boy into the gutter to get there first. The crowds had pushed in so close around the old wooden stage that from a tall building they would have all appeared as a giant letter O. Soon the same announcer that went around the town calling out pushed his way through the town's characters until he reached the stage. He quickly jumped atop the splintered stage and began speaking. The town could all hear him clearly, even those in the back. Everyone quieted down once they heard the familiar voice of Natas. Natas once again yelled out in utter excitement, "Here today we have yet another wonderful festival. I do say, Mayor Quimby, you must have eaten more than the butcher himself." The laughter rang out, but the mayor held his composure and sucked in his stomach, holding his breath. "Well, if you've all had your fill of the wine, and if your patience has run dry, I give you the main event." As Natas said these words, a caravan of strong men were carrying a large burlap sack. Each carrier had a corner. The crowd cheered and shouted at the sight as the men threw the bag onto the stage, and then began to unravel it before the townspeople. The bag dropped to the stage floor, and there stood before them a young woman. "Would you look at that?" yelled a man. The whole town seemed to gasp at the same exact time at the sight of her. "She's an ugly tad, ain't she?" cried an old hag. The crowd began to laugh and jeer as the young woman stood stiff and crying in the center of the stage. Her left eye had a gash from her eyebrow to her lip, as if someone had taken a spoon and scraped the skin out. The eye itself was a sickening mixture of yellow and red. On her forehead there was a burn marking in the shape of a snake, and her nose was broken in 2 places. Her right ear was completely gone, and her entire body was covered in sores and scabs that have been around since birth. Some of the townspeople jeered and threw fruit and ale cups at her, whereas some turned away in disgust. Some in the front row even were scolding the young woman for her past and what she had become. They yelled out names and brought back painful memories of all her faults of her past. She lost her strength and fell on her knees. In her half-singed hair she wept for what seemed an eternity. Then, in a burst, Natas sprung back onto the stage and proclaimed, "All of you know her, and even some of you have helped her on her way to this point in her life. As most of you know, we took her at a very young age and tortured her every day, at her consent, of course. And now that she is of age, and she has the honor of standing before us, as a freak and as a dead woman. Now, where's my box?" The townspeople muttered and murmured to themselves, telling each other that they hoped Natas would pick their idea. One of the strong men handed Natas the black wooden box. There was a little hinged door on the side of the box. Natas reached in and grabbed one slip of paper from it. The crowd looked anxiously at the little paper as he read it to himself. Natas's grin widened even to his ears, and his eyes lit up. "We have a winner!"
ha ha